All right, I'm cognizant of the time, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. And I got to say, I was listening to three of you, Charlie, Jen, and Leah. I mean, there's real power in their voice, real passion and conviction, and it brings me back. You know, you get up to the state level, you get a little far removed from what's really happening on the ground, and what's happening that matters is really happening in cities all across, not only our state, all across the nation. And I'm a true believer of this old adage that if you don't like the way the world looks when you're standing up, stand on your head and go local. Remarkable things are happening at the local level. And one thing I know, and one thing everybody that's ever served in capacity of mayor learns to understand quickly, is that mayors make lousy ideologues, and ideologues make terrible mayors. There's a hard-headed pragmatism to governing in a city. Decision-making, good and bad, day in and day out. And that connective tissue, that connectivity to your constituency, that feedback loop, the two-way conversation that we're having every single day, in so many ways is the success that you saw exampled by those three presentations. But that was not always the case. And here's my point of view. It wasn't that long ago where people like Leah scared the hell out of us and pissed us off. I served as a county board of supervisors member under then Mayor Willie Brown, a legend. For those of you who don't know him, a legend in California politics, dominant voice in California, Speaker of the Assembly, became mayor of San Francisco. And the Bike Coalition and the mayor weren't particularly friendly towards one another. The mayor, as a candidate, was elected despite their strong advocacy of opposition. He got into office and there was a lot of friction. I was serving there as the county supervisors, witnessing all of this. Glad I wasn't in the middle of it, trying to navigate it. And the intensity came in many ways. We were just then debating where to site a few bike lanes. It became a defining line between whether or not you're pro-business or you're anti-business. Business community almost unanimously opposing every single bike lane that was put up. You're going to destroy our businesses. They came out in force, and then this counter and prevailing force started to form and function in a much more organized manner. They were able to always convince, despite the mayor's opposition, a majority of our county supervisors, the 6 of the 11, and they started to have some victories. So much so, they felt more and more emboldened and became more and more organized, not just as bike advocates, but connecting to other environmental causes and to other political organizations. Power, real power, coming from connectiveness. And became a bigger and bigger force and a bigger thorn in the side of Willie Brown. So much so that his re-election was in peril because of those folks, because of that advocacy, and because of their organizing principle. At the time, there was something else raging related to the bike community, and that was something called critical mass. My God. All of these folks out there on their bikes, picking, of course, the commute times. Right then on Friday, was it the third Friday of every month, poor folks trying to get home, couldn't get home because thousands of these bicyclists would come together, self-organizing communities, no leaders, just hundreds of thousands of leaders, not one leader. And Willie Brown had to answer the question of what the hell are you doing, Mayor? I couldn't get home last night. Took me 2 hours. They were stopping the intersections. This is an outrage. It's anarchy in the streets. Why should we re-elect you? And Mayor Brown made a terrible mistake. He said, I'm going to clamp down on this lawlessness. I'm going to get aggressive going after these folks. Of course, at the time, we didn't realize how leaderless it was. We didn't realize there was no sort of centralizing individual. There was a centralizing thesis. But we couldn't call Leah to tell everyone to stop, or to at least be sensitive to the mom who had to pick up her kid after school or childcare or something. And as a consequence of that, the bike movement just took off in reaction to the anarchy or the dictatorial nature of this politician that is not listening to the people. As a consequence of that, Willie Brown struggled, even Willie, to get reelected, had a write-in candidate that they all supported, a guy named Tom Amiano, and it was stretched out in this remarkable campaign that If you haven't seen the documentary, it's worthy as political folks of watching this documentary to understand the whitewaters of the change. We were going from something old to something new. They weren't particularly friendly to the next mayor either. I unfortunately was appointed by Willie Brown, so I was an appendage of the status quo and struggled to convince them that as an environmentalist, as someone who's grown up in the city, I cared passionately about these issues, but they weren't so convinced. And back then there wasn't ranked choice voting, and even if there was, I wouldn't have been number 3. And they had all kinds of other suitors, and despite their opposition, somehow I won the election of mayor, even though every bicyclist had a sign of my opponent, Matt Gonzalez, and the bike coalition was everywhere making sure that I didn't get in. But despite all that, I learned to truly admire their advocacy and their sense of purpose and purposefulness. So much so that I decided to appoint Leah to stop complaining and criticizing and make her part of the problem, and put her on our Metropolitan Transportation Authority, where we were in the process of updating our bike plan, which I supported. And over the course of demonstrating, not rhetorical, but demonstrating true commitment, we, I think, began to convert a lot of people to the sincerity of our desires. But the backdrop of that, and I'll try to close, was my competitiveness, candidly. Because if you know a little bit about my politics, I'm very intense when it comes to environmental stewardship. And had the most aggressive green building standards in the nation, most aggressive solar program in the country, requiring alternative fuels, all our taxi cabs. We were first to ban plastic bags, plastic water bottles. I was out there in Lyon, France, and saw the program, what really began the bike sharing movement around the world, and said I want to bring it back to San Francisco, and came back to Paris a year later and saw the Believe program, which really popularized the bike sharing. But I said I want to bring these things back, all in an effort to become the dominant voice in environmental stewardship of all the cities in the country. And every damn year, unfortunately, we always fell short of that mark. They would come out with the annual rankings, and San Francisco was always number 2 in environmental stewardship, despite just leading in every other capacity. But 1, bikes. We weren't doing enough. The bike share program, we were going to be the first in the nation to do it. I had a city attorney say, well, you can't do it. There's liability. Folks get on these bikes, city is sponsoring them, someone falls over, they're going to sue the city. Folks say you got to have put helmets on. And everyone says, well, I'm not going to share someone else's helmet. And then people say, well, how do you pay for it? They say, well, we can pay for it by doing big billboards and advertising, and we'll happily pay for the bikes. People are like, no, no, billboards. I don't commercialize it. And so we struggled through all those things, and then somehow, I don't know how the hell they did it in D.C., they put it in, and it sort of created more fervor and energy, and eventually, as Leah said, it took about a damn decade, even though we kind of popularized it. We were at the U.S. Conference of Mayors saying we're going to, we're seeing these things take shape, and all those objections overturned. But here's my long-winded point. The reason we were always second was not just because we did not reach our potential on bikes, it's because we couldn't. It's not because we didn't want to. We were sued. Only in California could you be sued in advancing a principle of getting people out of their cars and increasing their health and air quality under an environmental regulation. We were sued under, well known in California, CEQA. The environmental law that was there to protect the environment was actually used against the expansion of our bike plan. We literally, was illegal, could not paint or stripe our streets. We couldn't put these shallows, these sharing lanes, couldn't do any of these things. We were completely stopped in all of these endeavors. It's a stunning thing to think of an environmental law being used against you because one guy said it was going to infringe upon his ability to park. I don't know what the hell the argument was at the time, but it took years and years. We eventually prevailed. So I always tell my environmental friends, don't tell me how perfect CEQA is, because it is abused even against the interests of which it was supposed to align. But nonetheless, having gotten that behind us, we then, with intensity, were able to move forward. We had laid out your organization and laid out a strategic plan, and we hit the ground running and started doing things at a force and rate and speed that were truly remarkable. And now we can lay claim, San Francisco, though I'm not there, of being the most environmentally sustainable big city in the United States of America, which I'm just, as a guy who grew up there, very, very proud. So that's my thoughts. That we've come a long way, and this ain't all easy. But there's no doubt the political acumen, the political influence and force these bike coalitions and their organized capacity are serious and significant. And I will say, I mean this, I'm not just patronizing. Leah's just truly one of the best and the brightest in that movement. And I would pay attention to her as consultants. I mean that. They move the needle. They've had a huge impact, and it's good for all of us. And it's a wonderful thing to see hearts and minds change. Final point, because I just can't help it. Whoever, when you're mayor, you're just going to get the grief, right? No matter what the hell happens. When we did the Sunday streets, when we started shutting down the streets, she referenced some of the opposition, but it was, for those of you who visited San Francisco, it was Pier 39, Fisherman's Wharf folks that wanted to take our heads off. How dare we shut down the streets right in front of them? And they fought us tooth and nail. And we put that first Sunday streets, and people were, I mean, all over the Bay Area, Oakland, East Bay, South Bay. People came out, and we had all kinds of events. You know, people were, and we had some guy who was, you know, believed in hula hoops and came out with 50 hula hoops, and all these kids are with hula hoops. He had free bikes that were being out there, roller skates. I mean, it was just a magnificent, magnificent day. So much so that now every neighborhood in San Francisco wants to shut down their streets. Every business organization is encouraging to see more of it. And it's a great thing. Those parklets, same thing. I think we were one of the first cities in the country, not just in California, to do them. And Leah mentioned there's a huge line of folks. I'm a restaurateur, and I'm just upset that folks across the street did it before we did it. It's become a phenomenon. Quality of life, you know that. In a world that's dominantly becoming urbanized, it's all about quality of life, and all of these things are principles of that ideal. And again, I'm just grateful for their advocacy and their intense passion for not just cyclists, but for healthy, vibrant, sustainable communities. Thank you. So I hope we convinced you to sell your house, move to California, and get on fire. If you haven't gotten a business card up into this basket yet, let's do so now. Last call.
Anybody else?
One guy wanted to put 500 cards.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you game the system.
This is not ranked choice, is it? No.
Do they have to promise to share the photo of them riding on social media later, maybe?
That's a great
keep
idea.
the love going?
I'm going to mix it up so there's no. And none of you have, you know, the key is always fold in these things. Fold your card because then it appears higher, just saying, for the future.
I'm a California voter, Gavin.
All right, Last name, sir? Yeah.